And welcome to the show. Glad to have all of you out there on the show today. And I just realized the show title is incorrect. We talked to Michael Kubas last week, and Vidal Martinez has not yet managed to make it in. So that hasn't happened. But anyway, glad to have all of you out there, and appreciate it. Hello, Venus. And how's your sister doing? And the chaplain Gypsy Roberts checking in from North Texas. Glad to see all you guys in there. Well, anyway, today's a good day. We have right here in studio live, we have Clint Morgan. He's running for the Court of Criminal Appeals, Place 5. And we're gonna find out a little bit about him. The Golden Hammer, of course, my friends up there, they've endorsed him already, so that's probably a good thing. And just before he's coming into here today, he's also on Texas Scorecard, so we'll ask about that as well. But meanwhile, let me switch camera angles here, and welcome to the show, Clint Morgan.
Thank you, Doc.
I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And so what does the Criminal Court of Appeals actually do?
So it is our state's highest court for criminal cases. Texas basically has two Supreme Courts, one for civil and one for criminal cases. And if you don't, we have our trial courts down below, and everybody's seen Law and Order, so they know what happens there. And if you have a trial and you don't like what happens in your trial, you get to appeal. And those go to 14 local courts of appeals, and those are around the state. Mm-hmm. We've got some of those in all the big cities and scattered around in the more rural areas as well. And then if you don't like what happens to you in the Court of Appeals, if it's a civil case, you can ask the Supreme Court to review it, or if it's a criminal case, you can ask the Court of Criminal Appeals to review it. So it's a court of discretionary review. They don't have to take cases, and it is the final determiner of criminal law in the state of Texas.
And what would be the basis for taking a case or not taking a case?
They typically look at whether it's an important issue that is circulating around the state, whether it has implications for other cases. They don't like to take cases that are decided strictly on really fact-intensive matters, because those aren't going to be legal issues that are going to help other people around the state. And so they try to look for cases that are going to help other people around the state in other cases. And also, frankly, just if the Court of Appeals is just plainly getting it wrong in a way that upsets the law of the state, if the lower court misstates the law and reaches a wrong result, then they need to grant review and fix that.
How is that possible? These are all lawyers here. They should know the law, I think.
They should. They should. Many people disagree with the law, though. We've got some activists on this going around in the state.
Oh.
I don't know if you've heard that or not, but
I have heard that, and I don't like making law from the judicial bench. It's never been the way it was supposed to be.
Not the way it's supposed to be. No.
My understanding is the court is always supposed to look at the constitutional aspects of the law and determine whether or not what is brought before them conforms to those constitutional requirements.
Yes, and to take the statutes and read them as they were intended to be written, read them by their bare terms, and just ensure that the lower courts are following the law is the way it's supposed to be.
Okay. Well, that all makes good sense. There are several things going on right now. I don't know if you heard Greg Abbott. I was a little surprised, but after just 6 years, he's finally getting around to address some of these sex change issues, like for young James up there, where his adopted mother is trying to convert him into a little girl against the wishes of his biological father. That would seem to be a case that ought to make it to you guys.
Right, whether or not that medical care qualifies as child abuse. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting legal issue. I left, as I've been traveling around the state, I've learned a lot of stuff that's going on, and I went to a presentation by Jeff Younger, and that was, I think, the most infuriating thing I've heard the entire campaign. It was a truly disturbing story from many different levels.
Of course, Jeff Younger is the father, the biological father.
Yes.
And I am mind-boggled by how a biological father loses custody, in effect, of his son to a wife that he was married to for a short period of time.
Indeed. I don't understand family law. I've always found it, well, it's just not I'm a theft and murder prosecutor, so family law is something I don't really understand, but it is disturbing that happened. And to see parental rights trampled on like that it's no good.
Well, I see Uncle Paul's also endorsed you.
Yes, he is very much into me. He and I started having conversations last December, and he is banging the drums, making a lot of noise for me about some things the Court of Criminal Appeals has been doing lately.
Okay, well, let's. Why did you decide to run for this position? That's always a good
question. So the Court of Criminal Appeals has been in the news recently, but I've been running since July of last year. And frankly, I was just dissatisfied with the rate at the court's performance. So I used to work at the court 10 years ago, and I worked for a judge there. And I saw, while I was there, the judge I worked for wrote the most opinions while I was there, disposed of the most cases, that is. And I saw how the court could work and how to move cases through efficiently. And since that group of judges left back then, the court has just been slowly grinding to a halt. They're granting review of about 40% fewer cases than they did back then, even though we've got these activist judges on the lower court. So that's not a good sign. And they're taking very long times to get cases out. Right now, it's uncommon for them to get an opinion out in less than a year.
Wow.
Back when I was there, we had 75% of our cases out within 300 days. Half of the cases were out within 6 months. And I think that's about a good, when you look at the briefing schedule, that's about a good pace. Right now, I got a case back, my own case. I won a case a couple of weeks ago, and it had been a year and a half, and all of the judges agreed on the result. So I don't understand why these things are taking so long. And then there was a particular incumbent who is the slowest guy at the court, the least productive guy at the court, and frankly, kind of a pro-defendant activist. And I thought if I was going to run for the court, the best service I could do for the state was to replace this guy with somebody who's going to be more productive and somebody who's going to be a stricter adherent to the law.
Well, that would be the guy that a lot of people mistake for the governor of Wisconsin, I believe.
Yes, that's Scott Walker, and we all remember fondly those times when Scott Walker smashed the government unions in Wisconsin. Those were good times to be a Republican, but yes. This is a completely different Scott Walker.
But still, you got to trade on that. Like we got a Rick Perry in the race.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah, I understand that. Well, this is an issue because I've always believed the old adage that justice delayed is justice denied.
Yep.
And if you're involved in a serious legal case like this, your life is on hold until it's disposed of one way or the other.
And a lot of people's lives are on hold. I recently had a murder appeal. And it was an open and shut case, no questions. And the issues he raised on appeal were not, I didn't think, meritorious at all. And I walked the victim's family through this murder appeal. And in a very real way, their lives were kind of on hold because they did not know what was going to happen to the man that they knew for a fact. There was no question about who did it. Knew for a fact had murdered their son, their brother. And that case took about a year and a half to work its way through the appellate process. And you never know, as a defendant, as a victim family member, you never know when the decision is going to come down. And so I would talk to the family about every 2 or 3 months, update them. Has anything happened? No, it's not happened. Do we know when it will happen? No, we don't. And seeing the emotional wear and tear that took on this family was, it meant something to me. And I think this should be a concern in the appellate process, that we need to pick up the pace because everybody's life is kind of on hold while these cases are pending appeal.
Well, you can find his website. It's clint4judge.com, and I'm going to put that up here for you guys so you can see that. And we'll go full screen here on that one. So, yeah, this is a very serious problem, and it puts a lot of people out for a long period of time. Not to mention, it costs a lot of money.
It does.
In many cases, people that can't really afford it.
Right, and those expenses get passed along to the taxpayer because it's regularly the case. Even if people have money for a lawyer, they're going to spend all their money for a lawyer at the trial. And so, if you've got money left over for an appellate lawyer, you either had a fair amount of money to begin with, or you probably just had a fair amount of money to begin with. People spend all their money, so they'll have a paid lawyer at trial, but then an appointed lawyer on appeal. And so by that time, it's just one lawyer being paid by this government against another lawyer being paid by a government, going to a court that's entirely paid by the government. And so it's
so now it's all taxpayer money.
Yes.
Yes. So that presents an issue. So you're a career prosecutor. Tell us a little bit about your history there.
So I started in Harris County back in 2012. So I worked at the Court of Criminal Appeals from 2010 to 2012, and then I came straight from there to Harris County, where what I have done is appeals the entire time. I occasionally get called into trial courts to answer complex legal questions. I help people on the phone, but I just do appeals 90% of my work. And I've been the most productive appellate prosecutor here, possibly the whole state, for this period of time. I've written about 400 briefs. I've been lead counsel in about 300 cases. I've become board certified in criminal appellate law. There's only about 130 people in the state who have that designation. I've now had 17 cases at the Court of Criminal Appeals. And I told you they only grant review of a small number of cases. So for me to have 17 cases in a decade is almost certainly the most among local prosecutors in the state of Texas. And, you know, I work for certain approaches to the law. One of the reasons I went from the court to being an appellate prosecutor, and it strikes me at how similar kind of the approaches are, because both the judge and the appellate prosecutor, we have a duty to be faithful to the law as it is written, right? As an appellate prosecutor, I can't be arguing to the court to change the law to save me on appeal. That's not a thing that we do unless the law is sort of provably wrong in its context. So we're stuck with the law, and we ask the court to give faithful interpretations of the law. That's what I did at the court. That's what I've been doing for 9.5 years here in Harris County as a prosecutor.
Well, I do have a question in here, which you may be able to answer. A lot of people are trying to understand, as I'm trying to understand, the Federal Supremacy Clause. And what I can't understand about the Federal Supremacy Clause personally is in relationship to, first of all, we have to support homosexual marriage because the Fed said so, but the Second Amendment is not federally supreme.
Indeed.
How do you get to have it both ways? I'm trying to figure this out.
Well, you get to have it both ways by maybe not having a Supreme Court over the years that was engaged in the most faithful interpretation of the law. And I've got a lot of hopes that the current Supreme Court is kind of turning around.
I did too, but I've given up hope, though.
Well, I'm an optimist. I'm just an optimist. I'm a big Clarence Thomas fan, always have been.
Well, he should have been the Chief Justice, in my opinion.
You know, every time there was an opening that came up, all I thought was, can we just give Clarence Thomas another vote? I've been happy with that. But
he seems to be, at this point, the most conservative constitutionalist on the Supreme Court.
He does, and he has successfully moved the law in the right direction in an awful lot of areas. And when he started off, people thought he was some sort of crank that nobody was listening to. But to the degree the Second Amendment has become enforceable at all, he was the impetus for that, with opinions that he started back early in his career. And the law is really turning around in his direction in a lot of ways. So I've got a lot of hope there. He is leading the fight. And he's got some friends up there, and they seem persuadable, some of them. So that's my hope. The Federal Supremacy Clause, of course, we have to listen to the federales when it comes to federal law. And we can do things in here. We can write intelligent opinions that try to show the originalist case for various things. But ultimately, that's the feds up in D.C.
Well, see, I live in the world where I still believe that the federal government is a child of the states, and therefore state law should supersede federal law in most cases. I can see federal law maybe as it applies to highways and roads, maybe a little bit interstate commerce, but beyond that, I have trouble I have trouble with federal law superseding state law.
It has certainly expanded beyond its original scope. And that is, it's all due to the incorporation doctrine of the 14th Amendment. Without that, there would be virtually no federal involvement in state criminal law. But largely, the rights that have been imposed on us from the federal courts we had those rights in the Texas Constitution already. Many people forget that. The Texas Constitution, it wasn't like we were some sort of fascist dictatorship down here until the federales stepped in and freed us from our oppressors. We have most of the rights in the Bill of Rights are in the Texas Bill of Rights, and so and this is our search and seizure laws. Most of that is litigated at a state level in Texas because we have a state statutory exclusionary rule that well predates MAP v. Ohio. And so there's a lot of federal intervention, and people litigate the federal issues because those are maybe the most interesting to them. But there's a rich body of Texas law protecting most rights that would be there even if the federales went away.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I've wanted to do in Texas forever is just legalize the Second Amendment here. And some really, really intelligent lawyerly types, when they decided they wanted to give us something that resembled constitutional carry, they gave us 28 pages more infringements on the law instead of just erasing the 20 words in Article 1, Section 23 after the semicolon, which then we would have had.
Yeah, I was
constitutional carry.
Right. I do a lot of gun law myself. I'm certainly the appellate section, the kind of gun nut who focuses on these sorts of things. And so I got tasked with writing up in the DA's office here the sort of when we accept criminal charges on people, we have a charge bank where you go through and you look at the elements of the offense, and that helps you write the indictment or the information charging the person with a crime. And so I was tasked with, after this most recent legislature, rewriting our charge bank to reflect the changes in the law. And yes, when the phrase constitutional carry is tossed around, people think, oh, okay, I'll just carry a gun. And that's not what exactly happened here. It's
definitely not what happened with what they just passed.
No, it's a lot of things moved in directions that I personally like, but that's just directional. It's not end results.
Because you didn't need 28 pages to explain what erasing 20 words from the Section 23 Article 1 would have fixed.
Yeah.
It's just simply all Texans have the right to keep and bear arms. It's simple.
Right.
And of course, my experience, and your experience probably too, is that criminals don't obey any of the laws.
That's kind of their distinguishing feature.
So laws don't stop crime.
Laws do not stop crime. They help us punish some things at the margins. You can define some white collar stuff and people listen to it, but gun laws, that's not really stopping an awful lot of stuff, most of them.
Well, and the chaplain said, so the 10th Amendment is void if federal law supersedes state law. Is that the case?
That's the case that the federales will have us know. And there was the new originalism back under the Rehnquist court, but that...
Great Justice William Rehnquist.
Yes, miss him quite a bit. Yes, we miss him quite a bit. He was a lone voice for a while when there wasn't a lot of conservative talk going on in constitutional circles. He really carried that torch for us. There was he was moving towards the new federalism, but that seems to have kind of hit a stopping point. Maybe that'll get revived. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yours this point. So tomorrow, if the feds decide I can no longer carry a Glock, then I can't carry a Glock any longer. Well, they decide stuff like that all the time, Chaplain, and
they do.
And sometimes they can enforce it.
Sometimes they can.
It's a screwed up deal. So I'd like to try to get the law to operate in our favor. Right now, I see the United States is mostly a lawless regime. So I'm very, very interested in state supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And dare I say, have you given any thought to Texas independence in light of the past, I'm going to say the past 18 years?
Well, I will tell you, when my wife and I moved to Texas, one of the reasons we moved to Texas was we wanted a place where we'd feel politically at home now and into the future, and that had a sense of self and a sense of when it's time to keep other people out. And I don't think I've crossed some road to Texas independence quite yet. I think personally, I want to make Texas as strong as it can be. That's part of what I do now and part of what I want to do at the court, because there is no downside to improving the structure and the power and the organization of the Texas state government, whichever way that goes.
Well, of course, so your major goal in the Court of Criminal Appeals is to get it back where it functions as a smoothly oiled machine, and the cases roll through a little faster, and maybe you get to hear a few more cases than they're currently hearing now.
Right. And so I tell people that I believe that the criminal justice system provides a deterrent effect against crime when it delivers results that are quick and predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the results take forever, people don't care. If if you don't know what's going to happen to you if you're guilty of sin and you go to trial, well, why not roll the dice? Why not try to get a bad ruling? Why not make a frivolous appeal in the hope that somebody makes up a new law and now you're ollie oxen free? And so that's what I want the court system to be. That's what I think the Court of Criminal Appeals can help it be, moving the law so that the results are easier to understand, easier to predict, and simply speeding things up. It's for an appeal to take 2 or 3 years when nobody really disagrees with the result is just certainly should not be the norm, and I think just not acceptable generally.
I'm reminded of the old story where the king sentenced the guy to death, and the guy said, "Don't kill me. I'll teach your horse to talk."
Yes.
Give me a year, and the guy said, "Well, either way, I got a year, and who knows, maybe I'll teach this horse to talk."
My wife and I use that story with each other quite a bit in terms of when we see delay. And yes, who knows? Who knows? The horse may talk is a code phrase we have for each other.
I like that. Well, so that is a real issue. On the Texas independence thing, I've analyzed the United States government pretty carefully over the years, and I've looked at our elected representatives that fail to represent. Mm-hmm. And I'm a Republican precinct chair, so I'm not against Republicans. I see no hope in Democrats. I couldn't think of one that I would even consider voting for. But sadly, I see a lot of Republicans that don't differ that much, and so that really bothers me. But the FBI is utterly corrupt. I don't think anyone can argue that point. And the Justice Department is certainly thoroughly corrupt. Started back under Clinton. I don't see if that can be fixed. And if you've lost the Justice Department and the FBI, I don't even want to talk about the State Department. There's a horrible mess. So I don't know how you would ever save the United States. I'm a big Donald Trump fan, but I don't think if Donald Trump was president today, I don't think he can fix this.
It would take an awful lot at this point. I mean, the problems with the DOJ and the FBI that we've seen in the last few years are disturbing. The guy that lied in the warrant affidavit, and everybody now knows this, and then seems to be back practicing law and no serious negative. That's not how I understand what happens when everybody knows you lie in an affidavit to get a warrant. That's not good. That's a thing that should come with significant punishment. That undermines the integrity of the entire legal system. If we cannot trust the people out there getting warrants and the people doing the investigations, there's no other check on them other than our trust, really. And when you see people getting away with bald-faced dishonesty, it puts you in a mind that maybe the system's not savable.
Well, that's where I'm at, and that's why I'm really I'm rooting for Texas independence, and I'm vitally interested in seeing where this gubernatorial race goes. In my opinion, any of the three are better than what we have.
I hear a lot of Republicans saying that out there. This is I myself was not particularly political before I started running for office, and started attending dozens of Republican events around the state, and everywhere I go.
Well, you're running as a Republican, that would make sense.
Yes, and everywhere I go, I hear the base of the party pushing the current wave of incumbents to the right as much as they can, and I think that's encouraging to me. Is when I see people being pushed to the right, that's the way we need to be moving in a lot of things.
Well, that's why I was glad to see Abbott come out and said, "Okay, we're going to investigate."
Yeah,
it's 6 years, Greg. 6 years.
Yeah, I saw. I was first tipped off to this. My iPhone had a Dallas Morning News headline that Ken Paxton declares health care for transgender children a crime. And I read that and I thought, I'm pretty sure that's not actually what Ken Paxton said.
Wait a minute. That's from the Dallas Morning News, though. You could trust them.
Right?
They're every bit as reliable as the Houston Chronicle.
I believe it. I believe that.
They're laughing in the chat room, too, I know. Hey, and another, the chaplain Tim Kelly's joined us, too. I got a lot of chaplains listening to this show. So as we're running out of time here, I want to make sure we cover that. I mean, speed and efficiency, very important. I respect that, yes. And nobody should have to wait 3-4 years for a case to be decided on appeal.
No.
And if it's going to go up the chain, if it's going to go to the Texas Supreme Court, or if it's going to go to the United States Supreme Court, the lower court appeal is very important.
Yes.
So we want to get that out. What else is really important to you in this race?
So Right. That's the big thing, is the speed and efficiency. And I'm going to tell you, the the court, and particularly the guy I'm running against, has just kind of moved the law in a direction over the last few years that just kind of pointlessly makes it harder on police and prosecutors. And I believe very much in following the law and in process, but process needs to have purpose. We don't just create new procedural requirements that don't guarantee anyone's rights, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got the case I like to throw out that my opponent wrote is a case called Martinez v. State. And if there's any officers out there working traffic, you've likely heard about this, because it used to be the case if somebody was at the hospital, then they took the blood at the hospital. This blood is no longer in their body, and they have no right to privacy in your blood alcohol content when you're driving after a wreck. Mm-hmm. And so the police could just go and get that and test you for your blood alcohol content. And then that's fine. You've got no legitimate interest of privacy in your blood alcohol content when you're driving. And if the blood's already been taken consensually, then there's no rights being violated there. And then this court...
So not a Fourth Amendment issue.
Right. It shouldn't be, but this court made it one. Judge Walker made it one in this case called Martinez that held that no, even though the blood is taken consensually and it's abandoned at the hospital and you've no right to privacy in your blood alcohol content, nope, police need a warrant for that sort of thing. And that was sort of the thing that triggered me that no, somebody needs to step up and run here, because that upset, certainly in Harris County, nearly every DWI and prosecution we had for an entire year. And when I mentioned this I talked to, particularly state troopers are aware of this case. I talked to some guy the other day. I just said, hey, do you remember a case from a couple of years ago about hospital blood draws? And he says, yeah, Martinez. Now my boss makes me get 2 warrants for this. And so it tossed out a bunch of cases. It created procedural hurdles for police, but it does not protect any substantive rights. It just created litigation. And they're doing that in a variety of areas here. And I feel like the law needs to be focused on actual rights, not mere process for the sake of process. And
well, certainly, I think everyone has the right to drink, and you perhaps even have the right to get drunk, as long as you're not making a public nuisance of yourself. But you do not have the right to get drunk and get behind the wheel of a car.
No, that's a right. That's a right we've just decided you don't have, because that's pretty dangerous.
Well, it is. People get killed.
Yeah, it's terrible, and there's no sense of those deaths. There's no sense of those deaths, and I mean that.
Of course, things have been pretty tough on the cops for a couple of years now.
They have taken the blunt of a lot of left-wing activism and a lot of judicial.
Got a lot of Soros DAs that are pushing this, for one thing.
Right. Police have been mistreated in the state and around the country for a few years now, and that upsets me, because working at the DA's office, I got to meet so many officers, and sure, every barrel of apples has somebody going bad in it.
There's going to be some bad cops. There's
bad to everything, but like so many of them they want to follow the law. They want to serve people. They want to protect people, and they just don't deserve the sort of bad rap, the mistreatment that they're getting in the media from the left wing at this point in time. They don't deserve that.
Well, absolutely not. In fact, right now we're seeing cops being prosecuted in Austin.
I saw that
because they shut down some of the Black Lives Matter rallies. They figured, they burned 2 or 3 buildings tonight. Maybe we shouldn't let them burn the 4th one.
Right. I saw that in the news. I've not read details of what's going on there, but as I've explained to officers before, when they're making decisions about how to keep public safety, I'm a tremendous supporter of the police, generally speaking, and I think they need to be given broad discretion when big insurrection. I don't know what we would call the riots that we saw in the summer of 2020.
Well, it was pretty bad, and we're talking about lives being lost. We're talking about buildings being burned, statues being destroyed, millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff being done. And here in Houston, our police chief, Art Acevedo, the accent is on ass, he went out and marched with them. And, so I said, holy smoke,
Yeah.
And right now we got 600 protesters from Washington, D.C. on January 6th. 200 of them are still in jail with no charges filed.
Right.
Seems to be a violation of the 6th Amendment.
The disparate treatment between those two groups, there's just disparate treatment there, and it's not great.
Well, so, the Republican Party, at least for many years, was known as, the party of law and order.
Yes, that's what I wanted to get back to. I just tell people law and order all the time. I've got it on my website. My campaign sign just says law and order with my name below it because that's what we need. And, various people in the criminal justice system get to make decisions about who gets charged with crimes. And the police get to determine who goes to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor gets to determine all of these things. But by the time things get to the judge, things have to be very cut and dry. And judges need to not be seeking to do what they think is right in their heart, but only what the law requires. And that's what we need to get back to. And that's what we need our judges to be doing. That's their role in the process, law and order.
Well, we're back to the blind justice idea, but I'm not sure that exists anymore.
I don't. We want it to. I don't know if it ever did. I don't know if it still does. It's what I aspire to. Right. We need generally fairness in the system, but by the time things get to the courts, by the time judges are making decisions, they really need to stick to the law and not let their personal sympathies be intervening and altering results of cases.
Well, I'm with you in that, and I appreciate it. Clint Morgan is the guy we're talking to. He's running for the Court of Criminal Appeals, Place 5 here in Texas, and I see some of my Florida friends have joined us. Glad to have you guys there. It's not going to help you much because you can't vote in this election.
Say hi to my grandma.
But your grandma's in Florida?
Yeah, she lives in Sebring.
All right. So, hello, Grandma. I hope you get to watch this.